Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today I want to talk to you about, well, how to prepare your children, how to prepare with children. There's a lot of things going on, and with children, it could be a little scary for them, and they may not understand what's going on. And so we want to talk about that and things that you can do to kind of get them ready. Now, I understand that not all of you have children. You may be too young or past that age, but I still encourage you to listen, because even if you don't have children, you may someday. And even if you don't have children because you're too old, there's a good chance that you have children in your life. And so whether you're a parent or a grandparent or an uncle or a potential future parent, this might be of some use to you. And while I don't claim to be an expert at all in preparedness and homesteading, and I guess not really as a parent, I do have lots of experience. I have several children, and I have lots of experience. And right now we have children that are grown and out of the house and have their own kids. So yes, I'm a grandfather. And then we still have children living at home. So I do come from this from personal experience. One thing I want to definitely say, and a lot of you parents can back me up, I think, on this. Children are very resilient, and they're capable of understanding things that a lot of times we don't give them the credit for. We live in this modern world where children are kind of pushed aside. Stick them in front of a TV or a video game or a cell phone, and let that take care of them. And we think that a child is just not capable of handling much more adult things. And what happens is the child finds out about the adult world through means that aren't the parents. And then that's the real problem today. Instead of us as parents, as a culture, keeping that responsibility of raising our children to ourselves and us raising them, and not allowing the education system or the TV and the Hollywood or the video games or the social media educate our children. Children are much more capable of handling things than you think. It wasn't that long ago in our history that children at a young age were physically doing more things. They were mentally handling things. They grew up fast, and they learned how life works a lot faster. And it's very possible, I'm not saying it will happen, but it's very possible that the world that we're headed into, it will be that same way again, that children are just going to have to grow up a little bit faster than they have over the last 20 years. And we as parents and as people of influence over children, we should get ourselves ready and know what to do and how to better raise our children. I once read that there's no better way to change the world than change how we raise our children. And because of the things that are happening in this world, we should certainly reevaluate how we raise our children and what we're doing. Some of the things that we do now, we homeschool, so a lot of what I say is also looked through those lenses of homeschooling our children. And of course, you obviously know we homestead. So we have a little small farm type property, and we have animals, and we, do that thing. And our children are very, very, very much involved in that. So from the physical aspect of physically getting them ready, you should encourage them to do these things. Our children are a very big asset of our property. They handle a lot of the chores on their own. We have a 13-year-old still at home, and then we have 9-year-old twins that are at home. And they do a lot. They pretty much feed all the animals. They clean up after them. They gather eggs. They're out there assisting me even with the livestock. If I have to go out there and do something with them, whether it's give them any kind of medication or move them around or help with their birthing, especially the 13-year-old, he's right there with me, and he's learning all along how to do this. When it comes to building things, they're helping. When it comes to gardening, they're helping in the home, inside when we're cooking, cleaning, canning, any of those things, they're right there helping. The little ones right now, well, all of them are. They're learning how to sew. My mother's been teaching them how to sew. They've gone through and they've mended their clothes. It's funny, the boys. It's not great quality work, mind you. But she was showing them how to do it, and they've, their old work play jeans and stuff that has holes in them, they're in there mending them and patching them up. This is a good thing. Something else that we do, and we did it just recently, I talked about it over on my Patreon channel, is we went out for the day, and we live pretty much right next to the National Forest. In fact, the boundary line for the National Forest cuts right through our property. And we did a little day hike, and we, did fishing and that kind of stuff too there. But the day hike, it wasn't just for the fun of it. And then of course that's a big part. It brings your family together. It creates getting out in the woods and away from all the distractions. There's all of that's good. But we also did some learning. We learned, some bushcraft skills, some survival skills. The kids all have kind of a bug out bag survival kit, and they brought those with them, and they learned how to use that kind of stuff. And we don't do that as often as we should, I'll admit. But my wife and I decided that this year was going to be different. We're going to do that even more often. And so those are some things that you can do with your children. Trust me, they can handle more. When you're out there working on your car, you need to have your kids out there with you learning. I mean, that's how I learned. I'm no mechanic, but I'm pretty good at turning a wrench. And I did it because I sat around and I helped and I watched others. And I remember at a young age, I think I was 9 or 10 years old, my dad had a little pickup truck and he needed to rebuild the carburetor of it. And he took the carburetor off and got the little rebuild kit, and he set it in front of me and he said, "Here, you need to rebuild this carburetor." And with a little guidance from him, I did it. And at times, I was helping tinker with the lawnmower and get it going. This is the kind of life that we need to be teaching our children. They need to be right there with us when we're going through our preps, when we're working on medical training, when we're trying things out, when we're doing things, whether it be solar panel stuff, firewood, figuring out water supplies and filtration, all these kinds of things that we're doing actively now and learning and honing skills. Our children need to be there right with us, okay? This isn't a time to say, okay, you guys go watch a movie while mom and I are working on this kind of stuff. They need to be there with us, and they will learn so fast. And something that we do is when we're learning this kind of stuff. For instance, this recent little day hike, I come up with an actual test, and I tell them that this is part of your homeschooling. And so we come up with a test and we give it to them, and the test is asking questions of maybe terminology, the things that we learned on that trip. So it gets them to think about it. So there's definitely the fun aspect, and kids love this kind of stuff. They love being outdoors. Even though they may not at first, if your child has never done that kind of stuff, they may not like it at first. If you're pulling them away from the TV and the video games to do this kind of stuff, but they will learn to like it. It's just natural in them. So certainly get them out, physically involved in the lifestyle. So that's number one. Now, the other thing is the emotional part of it. We have to get them prepared for that. And it's different for each age group, and it's different for each child. So I can't tell you exactly how to do it for your child. But I can tell you this. From my experience in my own children, the young ones, they know that things are going on. They don't know the specifics, and we shelter them from a lot of specifics, but they understand that the things are changing in this world, and that it's not the same way as it once was, and that it's going to continue to change. They understand that there's not everything is in the same supply. That we may not be able to get things, that things are becoming more expensive, and that we have to conserve and learn to conserve and learn to do with less, because as things worsen, we will have to do with less. That's just how it works. They get that. They get that the world is becoming a less safe place to be. We're teaching them, like I mentioned, the mending of their clothes. They understand of cutting back in food and things like that, and preserving food. They not being wasteful, and cooking from scratch. They get that, and we're teaching them that. The older boy, he definitely knows a lot more that's going on because he's mentally and more mature, and so he can handle it. And so we've talked to him more about that kind of stuff and how things are changing in the world and how we have to be more careful, and how I don't paint this doomsday picture with him. But I tell him that things are changing and there's a potential for things to get bad. And, we're hopeful and prayerful that it's not that time for us and that things will improve. But we have to be prepared emotionally and mentally and spiritually for the possibility if things continue to worsen for us. And so that's something that we talk about with him, or that especially that I talk about with him on a regular basis. Don't don't hold back so much from your kids. I understand we have to do it in a way that's a little bit softens the blow. We don't want to put them into a state of fear, but we need to tell them that that's why we live the way we do. That's why we're doing these things. It's to ensure our safety, and to provide a little bit of insurance so that as things worsen, we're prepared for that. Explain to them what preparedness is. And I think that most children are capable of that. And I understand you have to do it in your own way, and that's good. But certainly don't isolate them, because here's what happens. And I have heard people doing this before, that the mom and the dad, or maybe just one parent, but a lot of times it's both parents, are involved in this kind of stuff. They're involved in preparations. They're reading about it. They're talking about it. They're learning about it. They're acquiring the stuff. Maybe they're starting to be a little bit more self-sufficient. They're gardening. Maybe they have chickens. And the children aren't really that involved in it. The children are still living just a normal life, a modern life. The problem becomes is when things get bad, those children now are just a liability. Forget the emotional, the love, and all that. Yes, they're your children. You love them. But from a physical, tangible point of view, they are nothing more than a liability to you. They don't know how to help. They become panicked. They become very upset because they're not ready for things to not be available to them anymore. And so now you have part of the family that's really a liability. In raising children the way that I've talked about, you're creating vital assets to your property, and to your home and to your homestead. And when you do that, they contribute to the place. They're basically contributing to take care of what they cost. This is a concept that's been around for ages. I mean, that's why people had large families. If you go back into the Depression era, further back than that, and times when it was hard to survive, people had large families. Okay? Why is that? I mean, there's ways to not have kids. It wasn't because they didn't know that. They could have had much less children, but people had large families, and the reason for it is because that actually was a contributing factor to their farm. They were an asset and not a liability, because those kids learned at a young age to help take care of each other, to help contribute to the home and to the farm. And it actually made for a more productive farm. You didn't have to hire help. You had homegrown help, and we have to look at it that way again. And getting them mentally, psychologically, emotionally ready for that is really a must, and it's not as difficult as you think. You don't have to go into all the gory details of what's going on in this world. You just need to tell them, that things are changing, and depending on their maturity level, you can fill in the details from there. And then the third thing that we need to do is we need to prepare for, sorry about that, we need to prepare for long-term teaching them. We homeschool, and I'm a huge advocate of homeschooling. I believe that everyone that has a child should get them out of these education facilities you need to get them home and educate them. Now, I'm not going to go into details for that because I know that some people it's just difficult, but I'm telling you, there's no greater importance in my life than my children. And if I have to make sacrifices to take care of them and educate them, then we do that. But anyways, as things get worse, do you want to continue them being in those schools? What if those schools don't exist because of whatever catastrophe? I mean, we saw them basically shutting down schools for months at a time over this health crisis. I know there was the learning home education, but that didn't go so well with a lot of people, mostly because of the lack of internet access. How much more could that be possible if things got really bad economically, World War III, all those things? So what's the plan for your kids? Are they just not going to learn? They just going to stop learning? No, you need to be able to teach them at home. And one of the things that you should be preparing for is acquiring the educational tools to teach them at home. Curriculum, it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You can buy curriculum used. You can find books at bookstores, used bookstores, flea markets a lot of times. And there are certain curriculums out there that are much cheaper than others. And there's online curriculums that are even free. And while I wouldn't completely depend on the internet, you can download a lot of stuff. You can print off a lot of PDF stuff. For your children. You need to be prepared to not just with curriculum, but the right kind of books to teach them the correct history. We want to pass down a legacy to them. We're not just surviving to get through the moment. We're thriving for the future. And we don't know how much longer of a future we have here, but we can't just set aside and expect that the end is coming soon. We need to continue to prepare for the future. And in doing so, we need to teach our children and prepare them for their future, so that they can pass down these ideals and these traditions and these beliefs to their children, so that it doesn't just stop with us. So make sure you have the adequate teaching tools for that. You also want to have things to just entertain them, because they're children. And as much as you can put them to work on your property, on your homestead, they also need to have the adequate downtime. And we're very restrictive of what our children have access to, but we do allow them to watch TV, but it's very restrictive. For instance, we have things like the Little House on the Prairie series, and we have the Walton series, and the Rifleman TV show, things that are the old stuff that's still safe for them to watch. And I understand that electricity may not work, so we have backups for that. We have board games. We're homeschoolers. We have all kinds of art supplies and other things to keep them entertained. This is something that you need to incorporate into your preparedness plan, especially if you have children in your life. You can't just stock up on beans and bullets and rice and think it's going to be okay. Do you have clothing for them as they're still growing? Maybe you're not going to be able to purchase clothing as easy. Would it be a good idea to go to these thrift stores where you can buy clothing pretty cheap and buy a few sizes up from what they wear now? Shoes especially. And then just other things for them to keep themselves occupied if things got that bad. This is something that you should certainly be thinking about. If you have children in your life, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, or you have plans that your children and grandchildren may come and live with you, planning for that now, and getting the stuff ready, and then also talking to them now is going to make living through whatever could happen much easier with having children, because you don't want them to be a liability on your homestead. You want them to be an asset, and they can definitely be that if you change the way that you raise them and prepare for them. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.